The psychology major positions students to achieve a wide range of skills that are perfect for graduate school and succeeding in the workplace. But let's talk about psychology undergraduates who choose not to pursue graduate school. Are they explicitly taught how to seek out and apply their skills in professional settings following graduation? Do they even know who to reach out to for help? Well, that's a whole other story. Hello there, this is Bradley, and you're listening to Psych Everywhere, a podcast by Psych, the International Honor Society in Psychology. For this show, distinguished guests weigh in on applying psychological science to a diverse range of current events and to better your life. So, has your undergraduate school maybe failed to prepare you for entering the workplace? That may be a more common situation than you think. For this episode, Dr. Drew C. Appleby joins me to unpack potential shortcomings in your psychology undergraduate education. Along the way, he'll help you understand which jobs are available to you. He'll share how to make the most of your KSCs, which stands for knowledge, skills, and characteristics, in order to impress employers. And we'll also discuss how to choose and acquire new skills, and yes, even after graduation. Let's help you find and obtain a career that you can be proud of. Dr. Appleby served as the chair of the Marian University Psychology Department, the director of undergraduate studies in the psychology department at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, that's IUPUI for short, and the associate dean of IUPUI's Honors College. Over the years, Drew developed and taught a class specifically geared to help majors choose what to do with their careers, a course that many institutions are lacking. He's published over 100 books and articles, including Preparing Psychology Majors for Business-Related Careers, which is a Psych exclusive ebook. And he's made over 600 conference and other professional presentations, including 20 invited keynote addresses. Important to this episode, in 2018, Dr. Appleby published an article in the Teaching of Psychology journal. It's called Preparing Psych Majors to Enter the Workforce, Then, Now, With Whom, and How. So that article, it talks about the history of how undergraduate psychology programs haven't always provided the same level of support for job-seeking students as they have for graduate school-bound students. I'm sure that article is going to come up in this episode because it inspired the conversation that we're having today. Dr. Appleby, it really is an honor to finally get to meet you in person and welcome you to Psych Everywhere.
Well, the feeling is very mutual, Bradley, and I'm honored by your invitation.
Oh,
and eager to share the small amount of knowledge that I have on this topic.
I doubt there are very many people who have more knowledge than you do on this subject, Drew. So I'm just going to jump in because I've got a lot of questions. We'll just start with number one, which is how widespread is the problem of psychology majors who enter the workplace without adequate preparation or knowledge even of the skills that they'll need?
Well, Bradley, this has been a very persistent but widely unaddressed problem for many years. It was brought to our attention by my good friend and colleague, Dr. Jane Hallinan from the University of West Florida, in an article she wrote in which she described what she called the tiered system in undergraduate psychology programs that spend more time and resources on their students who plan to go to graduate school to become psychologists than on those whose career plans involve entering the workforce immediately after they graduate. Jane used the terms the worthies to describe the first group and the great unwashed to describe the second. Her publication motivated me to write an article that you have just referenced in the Teaching of Psychology that, among other things, provided a number of quotations from the 7 national conferences on the undergraduate psychology curriculum that were created to guide psychology departments in their attempts to educate their students. The first of these reports, that was written nearly 70 years ago, clearly stated that although not all undergraduate students will become psychologists, it is uneconomical to try to teach job skills to undergraduate students, and that the best provision possibly must be made for the preparation of students who will work professionally in the field of psychology. When I read these words, I quickly realized that from a historical perspective, psychology programs have created a systemically discriminatory climate in which their students whose occupational trajectory does not include becoming psychologists are literally deprived of the opportunities and resources they will need to develop the knowledge, skills, and characteristics that would make them successful in a highly competitive job market after they graduated with a bachelor's degree in psychology.
So my second question is, from a historical perspective, do you feel that psychology organizations and departments and faculty have made adequate changes to prevent workplace-bound students from being overlooked in college?
I sincerely believe that recently, professional organizations such as the American Psychological Association and Psych have begun to recognize this inequitable situation by creating and publishing and distributing materials that explain its nature, condemn its existence, and provide strategies for its eventual elimination. One of the most forceful statements that recognizes this attempt is the following quotation from the 2010 Undergraduate Education in Psychology, a blueprint for the future of the discipline. And I quote, "Faculty members need to recognize that if their students fail to achieve necessary competencies in the skills that employers value, then they have failed to prepare their students for post-baccalaureate success." That's a pretty strong statement, and it's a statement that I take quite seriously. When I asked Jane Hallinan, who I have mentioned before, who is actively involved in the undergraduate psychology department review process, if she is aware of how departments are responding to some of these recommendations, she replied, "I've not seen a great deal of evidence that mandates such as these have been acted upon by a substantial number of academic departments and faculty, although I'm seeing signs of it getting better. The privilege of the graduate school-bound student is not quite as exaggerated, but is still there." Jane also told me that the next edition of the guidelines for the undergraduate psychology major, which are currently under construction, are, quote, "putting more emphasis on the preparation for our job-bound students." Well, all of this is very heartening, but I believe that there is one long-standing and well-established tradition in higher education, not just psychology, but in higher education, that's going to be a very challenging barrier in our journey to leveling the playing field for our job-seeking students. Evidence of teaching, advising, and mentoring undergraduate students to prepare for jobs immediately after graduation is simply not considered to be strong evidence by many institutions for promotion and tenure. One of my jobs was at a very large research university. Our department chair was very protective of our new hires, and he would not allow them to engage in academic advising and gave them limited teaching loads because he believed these activities would take away from their time performing research. Depriving our job-seeking students from access to our youngest and most enthusiastic faculty is a strong reminder of the 70-year-old quotation I previously mentioned that, quote, "the best provision possible must be made for the preparation of students who will work professionally in the field of psychology."
I know faculty aren't always comfortable or knowledgeable about discussing careers outside of the academic world. I mean, if they went straight into teaching, they may have never been outside of the academic world. So who are some professionals that students or even alumni could reach out to for support?
Luckily, a recent trend in psychology departments has been to hire professional advisors who are not psychologists, who have advanced degrees in areas that require them to be competent to advise psychology majors who would like to know what kind of jobs they can enter immediately after graduation, what kind of skills are needed to succeed in these jobs, how to develop these skills during their undergraduate education, and how to communicate these skills to potential employers in a persuasive and confident manner once they graduate. Another group of professionals who can be very helpful in this process are the career counselors who are employed in every college and university's career center. A substantial advantage associated with services provided by these centers is that they also usually provide continuing career counseling services to alumni. Unfortunately, at least at this time, it appears that very few undergraduate students take advantage of these services, even though they've paid for them with their tuition.
According to APA's Center for Workplace Studies, the top 5 occupational fields that psych majors will enter are business, human resources, healthcare, teaching, and social service. Could you tell us a bit about why psych majors tend to gravitate toward these areas?
Bradley, I have a somewhat simple answer to this very complex question, and it's based on the experience I've had when I was invited by APA to participate as a member of a committee that was tasked to identify the employer-valued skills that psychology majors can develop if they take full advantage of both the classes and the extracurricular activities that are available to them during their undergraduate education. We identified 5 basic skill categories, which were cognitive skills, communication skills, personal skills, social skills, and technological skills. We also identified 17 sub-skills within these categories. For example, the major skill category of social skills is composed of the following sub-skills: collaboration, leadership, management, inclusivity, and service orientation. When you investigate the skills that are necessary to enter and succeed in careers in business, human resources, healthcare, teaching, and social service, you will find that these skills are those that employers in these occupations value in new hires and often include in their job ads. So in essence, whether or not they realize it, psychology majors are a very good fit for these occupations. And the earlier they're aware of this, the quicker they can begin to deliberately seek out opportunities to develop these skills so that they can obtain employment in one of these areas. By the way, if our listeners are interested in obtaining a document that identifies and defines these skills and also contains links to resources to help them to develop these skills, they just need to Google the words, "The Skillful Psychology Student."
What other things can students do with a bachelor's degree in psychology?
There are literally hundreds of things that they can do. And I think the best thing that I could do at this particular point in time is to help our listeners understand where they can gain information about all of these careers. If they would like to Google the following words, an online career exploration resource for psychology majors, they will come across a resource that I created several years ago in which I had identified 300 careers that psychology majors can prepare to enter. Now, these 300, some of them will be as psychologists, some of them, which obviously requires graduate school. Others will require graduate school too, such as dental school or medical school if someone wants to go in that direction. But the majority of them are going to simply be jobs that they can gain with a bachelor's degree in psychology.
Wow.
There's a poster in the resource that I gave you, but one of my colleagues, Ruthie Walker, right, from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, has just created a really wonderful poster that just includes the jobs that psychology majors if they go out into the workforce after they graduate.
We will share a link to both of these.
Wonderful.
In some of the older reports that you cited in that Teaching of Psychology article, and even in some people's minds to this day, I think there's this aggravating, perception that psych majors have somehow failed if they don't continue their educations to become psychologists. Could you share your thoughts on that and how that perception might be changed?
My thoughts on this perception are kind of simple, and they take the form of 3 powerful strategies that have become known as Appleby's maxims. Maxim number 1, know thyself. As Socrates suggested more than 2,000 years ago, conduct a serious self-examination to determine your strengths, your interests, your goals, and your values. There are ways to investigate those particular aspects of yourself that you can obtain in career services offices. So that might be a good reason to go over and ask them to take some interest or strength tests. Maxim number 2, to thine own self be true. As Polonius advised Laertes in the second act of Shakespeare's Hamlet, determine what you like to become based on what you know about yourself. Then create a realistic action plan to reach that goal. Don't leave your future just kind of up to the fates, so to speak. You've got to take your future in your own hands. Number 3, the third axiom is just do it. As directed by Nike, the Greek goddess of victory, speaking through her modern corporate namesake, says, put your plan into action. So if these maxims lead you to believe that psychology is the best occupational path for you to take, then take it. If they lead you in another direction, then that is the path you should follow. Being a psychology major does not require you or doom you to become a psychologist. It equips you with a set of knowledge and skills and characteristics that you can use to become whatever you want to transform yourself into. For example, one of my students in my careers in psychology class wrote her term paper on how she was going to use her undergraduate experience to become the best mother she could be to her children, because she wanted, her occupation was a stay-at-home mom. It was one of the most compelling papers that I've ever read in that class.
What should a psych major or an alumni say if a friend or a family member or even their employer infers that they aren't using, their psychology degree?
If any of these people say this, I'm sure that what they mean is that you are not on a day-to-day basis using the psychological knowledge and its accompanying terms in your conversations with your friends and family and your coworkers. In reality, conversations around the water cooler at work seldom center on Freud's psychosexual stages of development, the biochemistry of neurotransmission, or why the rat turned left in a maze. If you put the skills and characteristics that you learned as a psychology major to good use on the job, such as critical thinking, integrity, leadership, and flexibility and adaptability to new software and operating systems, then you are indeed using your psychology degree.
There are just so many KSCs. Again, that's knowledge, skills, and characteristics. I don't know how many articles I've seen with lists of 20 here and 50 there. There's so many. How can someone know which ones that they should pursue?
Well, that's a good question. But if you reflect back on Appleby's maxims, you'll understand that one of their most important outcomes is that you will have developed an occupational goal and have created and carried out a plan to accomplish that goal. Once you're comfortable with the thought of working in that occupational environment, the next step will be to seek the services of your advisor and or your career counselor to determine the unique set of KSCs that are needed to enter and succeed in that career. You can get a jump on this process by taking advantage of the power of a website called ONET, which contains just about anything that you might want to know about any occupation that exists. If you'd like to experience the power of ONET, just type ONET into Google and then type the name of a career that interests you in the box in the upper right-hand corner of the opening page. You will be astounded by how much information that you will discover about that career.
I think that gaining a new KSC might be something that sounds easier said than done. As an example, if someone wanted to gain customer and personal service, they wanted to gain this skill, what activities or experiences might they pursue?
Well, this KSC is defined in the skillful psychology student as the willingness and ability to seek ways to help people by displaying empathy, maintaining a customer, patient, or client focus, and engaging in the community. The following strategies can be used not only to develop the skill, but to also produce very compelling examples of what you could put in your cover letter, resume, or interview for a job. The first two involve classes, and the second two are extracurricular activities. I really want to make absolutely sure that psychology majors do not think that they learn about job skills or acquire job skills only in their classes. Sometimes extracurricular activities are even a better place to do that. So what you could do, enroll in a counseling class in which you will learn how to display empathy, listen actively, and focus on the needs and concerns of clients. Enroll in a credit-bearing service learning project in which you will learn how to serve others and engage successfully in the community. Volunteer to be an undergraduate teaching assistant or peer advisor or mentor in your department. Engage in a project like Habitat for Humanity that will provide you with an opportunity to be actively engaged in your community in ways that will benefit others and help you to practice a variety of essential helping skills such as collaboration, communication, creative problem solving, and the ability to work effectively with diverse populations. Those would be powerful experiences to talk about with future employers.
Of the KSCs that psychology majors often need in the workplace, which do you think they most frequently lack, and what could they do to acquire these KSCs?
Well, while the many national reports concerning what is known as the skills gap do not all agree, the 4 skills that are most commonly listed as lacking in new college hires by those people who hire them are writing, speaking, teamwork, and most frequently a combination of complex cognitive skills characterized as either critical thinking, problem solving, or decision making. Many students make the mistake of taking their required classes like English composition, public speaking, statistics, and research methods to simply get them out of the way, because they do not understand how important the skills they can develop in these classes will be to their ability to enter and succeed in the career to which they aspire. One strategy that psychology students can use to ensure that they enroll in classes that will help them to develop these skills is to make a list of these skills and give it to their academic advisor before they begin the class selection process. Next, tell your advisor that you do not want to enroll in classes just to get them out of the way or simply because they're required for graduation. Tell her that you want to become a career-savvy advisee whose purpose is to maximize your career success by identifying the skills that employers value, deliberately choosing to use both the curricular and extracurricular components of your education to develop these skills. And then number 3, successfully marketing these skills in a clear and confident and credible manner during your job search and acquisition process. I'm sure that any academic advisor will be pleased to hear this message and will do his or her best to help you enroll in a set of classes that will take you several steps closer to achieving your occupational aspirations.
Are there any KSCs that majors spend time on that aren't as commonly needed in the workplace?
Well, Bradley, I once heard a speaker at a conference say that employers are much less interested in what you know than in what you can do with what you know. So classes in which you simply pay attention to what your instructors say and then merely regurgitate this material on tests will not be as valuable to you as those in which you first learn the material and are then challenged by your teachers to use what you have learned by creating and utilizing effective strategies to solve problems similar to those that you will face on the job. I once asked an employer at a job fair what his most serious concern was about the students he hired right out of college. Without a moment's hesitation, he said, being too reliant on book learning. So the lesson here is to choose classes in which you're going to be engaged in some sort of active learning so that you can practice actually putting your knowledge to work rather than simply acquiring it by studying it and then repeating it back on tests. Classes that involve some sort of a project that involves solving a problem will prepare you well for the challenging activities that you'll face on the job, like increasing employee morale, decreasing employee theft, or hiring employees whose behavior will lead to greater customer loyalty.
What are some careers that psych majors don't frequently pursue, but that you think they might be a good fit for?
Well, I'll tell you, there's many of these, but let me just give you some examples. Several of my students are employed in areas that are typically considered to be more suitable for business majors than psychology majors. One is a real estate agent, one is a pharmaceutical sales representative, and the third is a stockbroker and financial manager employed by Merrill Lynch. I have no doubt that their financial success and personal satisfaction with their occupations is due primarily to their ability to successfully engage in the following 6 activities that are included in APA's description of a skillful psychology student. And they are engaging in active listening, attending to details, displaying creativity, locating, organizing, and evaluating information from multiple sources, demonstrating a strong client focus, and performing their work, and this is probably one of the most important ones, in an honest, reliable, and accountable manner that reflects the ethical values and standards of an organization. I would say 3 or 4 students of mine have gone into real estate. And I remember one of them, several years after she graduated, writing me a letter and literally apologizing to me because she didn't go into psychology. And when I took her out to lunch because I wanted to talk to her about that. And when I discussed, okay, tell me, what do you do as a real estate agent? It was absolutely amazing because every time she told me something she did, she was able to trace that back to some sort of experience she had in her undergraduate career, not necessarily in psychology classes, many times in English classes or communication classes. But there are a lot of skills that we provide students with opportunities to succeed that can lead them into really interesting careers.
For students at schools that don't offer this specific course to help them see their many career options and prepare them for specific jobs, or even for alumni who are already out of school, where should they go to seek out this information?
One very valuable source of information on this topic is the sponsor of this podcast, Psych, the International Honor Society in Psychology. Eye on Psych, which is their online magazine, contains many articles created specifically for job-seeking psychology majors that are written by psychology faculty with years of experience in helping their students to understand their occupational options, to identify the requirement of these occupations, and to create plans to use their undergraduate experience to prepare for, enter, and succeed in specific careers in these fields. Psych has also begun to publish low-cost ebooks. I think if you're a Psych member, they cost about $6.
It's $4.95 with a member login.
Is it $5? Okay. Even cheaper. These books are composed of articles from Eye on Psych that are devoted to a common topic, such as an eye on the workplace, achieving a career with a bachelor's degree, and preparing psychology majors for business-related careers, which is a book I wrote specifically for the 56% of job-seeking psychology majors who end up working in careers such as sales, management, marketing, finance, advertising, and public relations. There are several other many sources of information on this topic, but these two would be a very good start for job-seeking psychology majors who are not lucky enough to be members of a department that provides them with specific career-related courses or resources. 2 other excellent sources for this type of information are professional as opposed to faculty advisors in their department and the career counselors who are available in their college or university's career center. One final resource that I would recommend highly is your department's alumni who work in the field you're interested in pursuing. There is probably no more valuable resource in this situation than a person who has already been a student in your department and who can share with you the strategies that he or she used to gain successful employment in a career that you would like to obtain. I helped to facilitate this in both of my jobs, both at a small liberal arts college and at a large research university, by collecting my alumni's business cards. And then I made a display of those business cards to show students, current students, what kind of areas they could go into. And I had asked these students, would you be willing to help anyone who was interested in one of these careers? And they all said yes. And I said, well, then is it okay if they use your contact information on your business cards to get a hold of you? And they were all very pleased with that situation. And I remember there were some really nice pairings of current students and alumni who, got together for lunch and talked about job opportunities.
Wow, that's a wonderful idea.
Simple, but it worked.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best ideas are simple.
I know that you were recently on the Teaching of Psychology Facebook group, and you asked the members of the group if they had any students who had found interesting careers. Did you want to share any of those today that people shared?
Boy, I'll tell you, they gave me a whole bunch of them.
I bet.
All I have done so far is just to collect screenshots of what they said, so I haven't really had a chance to put it together. But I think I found that many of them said that their students were going into like law enforcement. A number of their students had become firefighters. Basically, we're talking about first responders. And I really think that a psychology major who has paid attention to what it is that psychologists, say that they should be really developing. Things like active listening and compassion and what have you are going to be, wonderful candidates for first response careers. It's just amazing the absolute wide spread of all of those careers that people went into. Their careers in business, their careers in education, their careers in child and family situations. I think it's going to be an amazing list when I finally put it together. And what I intend to do is to put the list after about a week or so of gathering the names, send it back to my colleagues and saying, here is all I've collected so far. Can you give me even some more that aren't on this list? So I think I'm in the process of creating a new sort of resource for students who really don't want to be psychologists.
Cool. When you do that next post where you've kind of gathered together what you have so far, if you want to send me a link, I'll put that in the show notes for the episode too. And that way listeners, if they think of some careers that are unique that their students have done, they can share that as well.
That's wonderful. This is becoming the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Yeah, very cool.
That is wonderful. I consider that to be probably one of the most, let's say, useful and beneficial aspects of this particular podcast that you've invited me to be on. So thank you, Bradley.
Wonderful. Well, I like hearing that it helped the speaker as well. So that's cool.
You bet.
So that's my last question. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or that I might have missed?
I think you covered it very well. I mean, you gave me an opportunity to really think about some hard questions, and I've done my very best to answer them. And with a little bit of luck, this podcast is going to be listened to by people who can pick out maybe one or two little gems that will help themselves.
Oh, I think there's more than a few.
Yeah, that's thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, yeah. I really can't thank you enough. I know you've spent a lot of time in preparing for this because I had a lot of questions. I really feel like that a lot of people just don't get the information that they need from their school. And then when they get online and they try to start figuring out what to do, there is so much information out there that it's like, how do you know where to start or what to trust? So I really, truly appreciate you taking the time to give us such a great overview and really give us places to start so that people can look into this and continue to advance their careers. So It's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
I have one last little thing to say about this interest that I have. I mean, this has been my career passion. I taught my very first psychology class in 1971 as a graduate student at Iowa State University. And because I was a rookie teacher, one thing that lived in fear in my heart was a question that a student would ask me that I wouldn't know the answer to. And one of my students finally did that. I mean, I did my very, very best to be able to, know the difference between positive and negative reinforcement and punishment and all those other psychological terms. But one of my students, who was a horticulture major, and who was really initially kind of disappointed that he had to take a course in psychology because he couldn't see that there was any relationship between psychology and plants. But as the course progressed, I noticed he became more and more and more interested. And one day, he asked me the dreaded question, the question that I did not have an answer to. And that was, what could I do if I wanted to change my major to psychology, but I didn't want to go to graduate school to become a psychologist like you are? What could I do? And I had absolutely no answer for him because I had never considered being anything but a psychologist and a teacher. That literally kind of stuck in my academic craw in such a way so that I then began doing, all of the things that I have done in order to be able to help students who are psychology majors to know that you don't have to become a psychologist to use your psychology degree in a way that's going to not only be beneficial to you, but also basically many, many, many people around you and who you are going to be interacting with. So it's been a 50-year project for me.
Well, thank goodness you've decided to take this project. I know you've helped a lot of people.
Yeah, well, it's been fun helping them.
You've just listened to another episode of Psych Everywhere. I hope you'll take the information that you learned today and apply it to your life and the lives of your students, colleagues, and friends. If you are one of the 56% of psychology students who does not wish to pursue a graduate degree, I'd like to point you towards Psych's most recent ebook, which was written by Dr. Appleby. This 8-chapter crash course will help you develop realistic strategies to transform your career plans from wishful notions into goal-attaining behaviors. In this ebook, Dr. Appleby will teach you about specific business careers that you can obtain with a bachelor's degree in psychology, strategies to increase your ability to enter a career, and how to promote your skills so that a potential employer will conclude that you are a better match than any other job applicant. The book is called Preparing Psychology Majors for Business-Related Careers, and it can be downloaded on the Psych online store. Again, there's a link in the show notes, as well as many other links, such as one where you can go to share with Drew what you or your students did with a psychology major after graduation. If you haven't already subscribed to Psych Everywhere, I don't know, maybe this is your first time listening to the show, go ahead and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Tell a friend or a colleague about the show. Word of mouth is a huge help for podcasts, so share what you learned with the next psych major you meet or in your classes. You can also follow us on Twitter at Psych Podcast and leave a review at Apple Podcast or wherever you go for podcasts. You'll absolutely make my day, and more importantly, you'll be helping us to get Psych everywhere. Okay, that's all for now. I'll connect with you again soon. Copyright 2022, Psych, the International Honor Society in Psychology. All rights reserved.